Moving on to the first session of the day, we have a keynote session. The speaker is a creative leader, creative director, author, public speaker, and mentor with over 30 years of experience in marketing and digital advertising. He believes in creating breakthrough ideas that have an impact on businesses through distinct resonance. As a copywriter or director, he has won more than 300 awards, including every type of medal in Lions, Clios, One Show, D&AD, as well as the host or other awards from around the globe. As a creative director, his aim has always been to create environments that allowed creative excellence to flourish. He has led and inspired teams of creatives in London, Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Malaysia, and across the APAC region, resulting in hundreds of advertising awards. He has also written books about creative leadership, presentation skills, superior writing, and ways to create a distinctive brand. Today's keynote session will be conducted by none other than Andy Greenaway, Chief Creative Officer and founder, Rumble.
Hey guys, nice to be with you. My name's Andy Greenaway. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Rumble, which is a content marketing and brand company in Singapore. I've been in the region for a long time. I've held very top positions. I was the regional creative director for Saatchi & Saatchi across Asia. I was the regional creative director for Sapient Nitro across Asia. And I was the chairman of Ogilvy in Singapore for a few years before I realized I preferred being a creative person than a suit. So today, I'm going to talk to you about a thing called distinct resonance. And the reason I'm going to talk to you about that is because much of the content we see out in the marketplace doesn't get seen. And actually, rule number one of any content is that it grabs attention. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so stick in the mind, touch the heart. If you can do those things, those two things with content, you will achieve success. Oh, sorry, why is it not sharing? Okay. So Houston, we have a problem. Much of the content out there just isn't engaged with consumers the way it should be. And in fact, if we look at this is from a company called Beacon, which is a marketing analysis company. And they found through their research that a minuscule 5% of content generates 90% of engagement. So that means hardly any of the content out there is actually engaging with their consumers. So that should be a worry for any marketer or client, or even for an agency who's producing this stuff. That must be a huge worry, because it just means that what we're doing isn't actually getting seen and isn't being engaging enough to actually create some stickiness with the brand. So that means also a lot of marketers are wasting a lot of money. If 95% of all the content out there isn't doing its job, what are they actually paying for? And this is the problem. How many times as creators have we been asked to do these types of videos? And these videos, this animation technique is pervasive. It's everywhere. And that's the problem. If it's everywhere, it becomes wallpaper. If it becomes wallpaper, nobody watches it. So what's the solution to that? Well, we at Rumble have this thing called distinct resonance. Distinct is obviously obvious, but resonance may be a bit more difficult to understand. But actually, if we analyze that statement, distinct resonance, here's what it means. Distinct makes sure you're seen, or make sure your brand is seen, and resonance makes sure your audience cares. If you can get those two elements into the content that you create, you've got a formula for success. That said, it's a very difficult thing to achieve. But the kind of stuff we're talking about is something like this. Let's have a look at one of my favorite pieces of content done by the BBC. And once you see this spot, you'll remember it forever, because and we'll talk about this later, but it has certain things going for it from a psychological point of view, which makes sure it sticks in your mind. So that has a lot going for it. It's got a lot of superstars in there that are recognized, especially in the West anyway. It's got a great soundtrack, and the production is absolutely spectacular. It's beautifully produced. And all this stuff, if you think of a baking bowl, you put all those ingredients inside there, you mix them all together, and you make it come out as a beautiful piece of art, and it sticks in your mind. If you compare that to the left, which I've dubbed semantic, it's very different, right? The stuff on the left, you don't really care about it. You've seen it before. It's not particularly engaging. And we call this semantic. So semantic is a form of memory, which is to do with stats and features and benefits and knowing stuff. Episodic, on the other hand, is content which is about direct experience. So when you have direct experience of something, it's emotional, and it rouses emotions in your body and feelings, and it sticks in your head. This thinking was kind of pioneered by a guy called Endel Tolving. He's a very, very famous psychologist who's based in the US. And he's the guy that did a lot of work on this semantic and episodic type of stuff. Unfortunately, when we talk about only 5% of content sticks in our minds, and the 90% doesn't, if you like, the 90% doesn't is because it's semantic. It's not moving us. It's not making an impact. It's not actually engaging with us on a higher level emotionally. So this is the difference. So semantic is rational quite often, and a lot of content out there is rational. We don't remember rational stuff. Our brains are actually wired to remember emotional stuff. So episodic content is emotional. Semantic is about knowing. So I know my times table. I know that the grass is green. I know what a Coke looks like. Experience is actually smelling the grass, feeling the grass. Experience is actually tasting the Coke and the bubbles that kind of give you a strange feeling in your mouth. Semantic is factual. Episodic is visceral. So factual, yes, factual things, they're important, but you don't remember them because they're not particularly interesting quite often. But visceral things, they are reactive. They create this emotion inside of us. Semantic is quite often passive. Episodic is active. And semantic content is quite often typical. We see a lot of it. And if we see a lot of something, you get used to it. On the other hand, episodic has to be remarkable, because remarkable things are the things that get remembered. So at the bottom here, I've got quickly fades from our memory. That's what happens with semantic content. That's what's happening with our content currently, the vast majority of it. It fades from our memory within 2 or 3 days. Episodic memory can actually stick in our memories for a lifetime. Our favorite songs, they stick in our heads for a lifetime, at least the melody and the chorus, because they are visceral, they're remarkable, they're emotional, they give us an experience. So if I show these 2 photos, the one on the left, you know already what that experience was, because actually what we found through psychology and research is that direct experience doesn't have to be something you live being at an event. You can see it on TV. So video gives us that direct experience through sounds and images, and it rouses those feelings. So we know about the Twin Towers, know about 9/11. Everyone now in the world knows this guy. He was murdered by a policeman. These are episodic memories. And in fact, actually, this is a higher level of episodic. They're often called flashbulb memories, because once they're in your head, they just stay there impregnated like a flashbulb from a camera. But that's obviously big historical news. But if you've ever been in the maternity ward and you've watched your baby be delivered, you'll remember it. If you get fired from work, especially your very first time, you remember being fired, and you remember what the boss said. You remember that expression on his face, and you remember the sinking feeling in your stomach, in your heart, as you realize you've lost your job. These are episodic memories. Even on film, in movies, the film on the left is from Titanic, and if you watch this movie, most people remember, "I'm the king of the world," because that's what he shouts at this moment in the movie. But we remember it. We don't have to be nudged and reminded. We remember it implicitly. The movie on the right is Jurassic Park, and this is just before he eats the guy that gets who's hiding in the toilet. But again, you remember these movies. Most soundtracks, most music we remember if they're our favorites. And here's some famous ads. And I don't know if you've seen these, but the ad on the left is a famous ad for Cadbury Gorilla, and it was voted the best TV ad of the decade in the UK. And it's a gorilla drumming to drums against a beautiful track from Phil Collins. And it's just unexpected, it's charming, and you remember it. The one on the right, this is for Marlboro cigarettes. And it's a very old brand, and obviously, probably not a good thing to advertise cigarettes anymore. But Marlboro was a brand that was struggling to actually get market share. And they tried all sorts of advertising. They actually won awards for some of their advertising back in the day. But it was only when they actually did a version with a cowboy that actually the sales spike went through the roof. And if you think about, again, this category, their competitors were using lifestyle images. It's all the same. People at parties, people in, parks having fun, and it's all very lifestyle-y. And suddenly this brand comes along and it uses a cowboy. No one else used a cowboy. And the cowboy was rugged and rough and quite often, in isolation. It was kind of a man. And so within 2 years, Marlboro became the best-selling cigarette in the US. But it didn't take long after that for it to become the best-selling cigarette around the world, just because they came out with an episodic mnemonic that actually stuck in people's heads, and no one else did in that category. So that's the power of coming with episodic ideas. And I remember, even when I was 13 years old, I can still remember ads from all those years ago. So that's over now 40 years ago that I saw these ads. And one was for a thing called Smash, which was like mashed potato. And they used these aliens that used to laugh hysterically. And then there's another guy called the Crest the Bear. So I can remember about 5 or 6 or 7 commercials from when I was 13 years old. That's how powerful they were, and how those guys back then understood how to use mnemonics and humor and emotion to stick in our heads. This is the stuff that no one does remember. We don't remember stuff like this, and this is what's pervading our world. So when I finish this presentation, there are some things that you'll remember, but you won't remember this stuff. This is wallpaper. This is what's rational and expected, and actually something we don't really care about. And so it will be forgotten within less than an hour. So this spot I'm about to show you now, this is an ad we did in Malaysia when I was at Saatchi & Saatchi. And their sales were okay, but they weren't brilliant. And we did this ad. It's very episodic. It's a memorable ad. And the sales increased by about 30% after I started running this ad. That's the power of episodic. It's not that it just gets remembered, it actually compels people to act. So they're kind of intertwined. Episodic communication gets remembered, but because it gets remembered perhaps, then actually people remember that actually I engaged with that brand and I'm going to go further and perhaps purchase something from those people. Let's have a quick look. So the do's and don'ts. And I've got to say, think about that ad, right? So is it distinctive? Yes. What ad in the car world uses monsters? No one. So straight away, you've done something in that category, which is completely different from anybody else. So it's not ordinary, which is the bit on the right. Is it emotional? Yes. It makes us laugh. It's funny. It's unexpected. It makes us curious. And it's definitely not rational. Is it memorable? Yes. I assure you, you'll remember that ad for the next few weeks at least, because you just saw it and it's had an effect on you viscerally. Is it forgettable? No, I don't think it is. Is it unexpected? Yes. Is it cliched? No. Is it artful? Yes. I mean, there is an art to doing comedy. There's an art to doing films which actually draw you in and create a curiosity, and then give you a reward with something unexpected and delightful, which is what that ad did. So don't be artless, be artful. And then also the thing about brands is being consistent. So, and consistent at the same time, because when you do the same gag time and time and time again, then actually people remember you. So but it still had the same impact. It was still emotional. It was still iconic. It's demonic. It still cut through the clutter after all those years. So actually, once you hit on something, so what's happening today is that a lot of brands are flip-flopping. They try something, they try something else, they do something else over there. They go left, they go right, they go up and down. And actually, what that means is that you're making it even more difficult to be episodic, because episodic actually is about memory, and consistency plays a big part in that memory. So that's all I've got for you today. If you want to find out more about distinct resonance, I go into much more detail in a white paper that I created, and I talk about the other people who are academics and professors whose work I've kind of stolen, if you like, to put this thinking together, and you can find it at our website down here. So on that, I hope you have a really good conference, and I hope you'll be able to do some episodic work on the back of this presentation. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Andy, for your insightful session.